Just a few years ago, we would all be so excited for the latest comic book movie to release because there were so many great characters and stories to be told. But over the past few years, companies like DC and Marvel definitely have lost a lot of consumers and our interest. But now that the DCEU is officially over, there's a lot of talk about the fall of comic book movie culture and why it's inevitable. I have a few different things that I want to show off, but before we get into the topic, if you enjoy the content I create, check out the links in the description, follow me on social media, and consider supporting through Patreon or YouTube memberships. Now, I wanted to start off with this Variety article. It's what I'm primarily going to be referencing. It says comic book movie culture didn't just stumble this year, it face planted, giving us movie after another that fans didn't much care about, and that corporations backing these films took a disquieting loss on. I have had to talk a lot about failing comic book movies, and it honestly makes me sad because just a few years ago, I loved comic book movies. I would get so excited for the latest ones, and of course, when it comes to things like the MCU after the Infinity Saga, just kind of didn't capture my attention anymore. I know that's the same for many of you. And the DCEU, in my opinion, was very promising at first. I loved Ben, Gal, Henry all together. Jason Momoa is a really good actor. But unfortunately, they really stumbled with that. And then, of course, there was a lot of drama behind the scenes with some of the actors that they chose to get rid of and also chose to keep. But now that the, DCEU is over, we're looking to the future, seeing what's going to happen, and it doesn't look like it's going to be very positive. It says, according to the gospel of 21st century Hollywood, the words comic book film and box office disappointment are not supposed to appear in the same sentence. If you asked me, 6 years ago or 7 years ago, do you think that comic book movies are going to fail? I'd say no, because it was in such a strong spot. These movies were constantly dominating the box office, but that's just not the case anymore. It says when they do, not just once, but over and over and over again, the tea leaves are telling us something ominous and maybe definitive. Of course, there has been a lot of talk about superhero fatigue, and while I do think that, the genre has been milked quite a lot, and there are, a lot of movies that are coming out in, the comic book sphere, I don't necessarily think the problem is just that they're comic book movies. It's that they're bad movies. These writers that they're choosing, the directors they're choosing are god-awful and don't deserve to be near these projects. Just look at the Marvels, okay? Nia DaCosta had done 2 other movies, nothing near the scale of an MCU film. And then she got handed the Marvels. I mean, of course, the Marvels was kind of a disaster from the start because it's, the 3 strong women of the MCU coming together, but that's beside the point. They're handing these projects to people who don't know what they're doing. You need experienced writers, producers, directors on these films like we previously had, and everything could be okay. But yeah, I mean, there is definitely a fatigue from bad movies, but if they were coming out with another Henry Cavill Superman, I know that people would show up because Henry Cavill's such a big actor. People would be so excited to see his character and see his story again, and that would sell. And that's the difference, is that good comic book movies could still do well, but instead we've got, the DCs, in the Warner Brothers coming out with things like Aquaman 2 with Amber Heard, The Flash with Ezra Miller, these controversial actors, movies that have been delayed several times that just don't have a lot of hype behind them. And then with the MCU, you have films like Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania with the god-awful CGI, and then The Marvels, which basically is just female power. Like, these are not movies that people want to see. Another big problem with these movies isn't just the fact that they're focused on pushing all of the females that really aren't characters people care about, but the message. I mean, they are constantly shoving in our faces some kind of message, some kind of narrative, some kind of DEI driven casting. It's just not working for them. I mean, their messaging is as subtle as a jackhammer. They don't know how to tell good stories with good messages behind them anymore that are subtle, that make you really think about what they're trying to say. That's just not happening in entertainment anymore, especially with movies like, say, the Marvels. I mean, there's so many cringeworthy, like, feminist jokes, so many comments about how, women are mistreated. There are just these small things that add up to be this giant pile, and that's why people are sick and tired of these bad products. It's a plethora of issues, right? Bad acting, bad writing, the message, all of these things, but they all lead to people not buying tickets. And speaking of sales, looking at the numbers, the only movies that people showed up to watch and had positive numbers were Guardians of the Galaxy 3 and Across the Spider-Verse, which is animated. And I think that animated films are definitely a different classification than live action films. So the only live action one that even came close to making money was Guardians of the Galaxy 3. One movie out of 8 this year. I mean, that is pretty bad. It says, why in 2023 did this happen? The analysis has mostly been offered as simple. The movie companies served up mediocre superhero products. I completely agree with this, and that is why they suffered. They have dud after dud after dud. I mean, look at this. The way you think back on Quantumania and Shazam! Fury of the Gods, The Flash and the Marvels, and the Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, the pattern is clear. It's not simply a Marvel thing or a DC thing. The thing is that the popularity of comic book movie culture took a major hit, and it says it may be fading away. I don't think that we are ever going to get back to a point where we were with the Infinity Saga. I don't think that we're going to see that much hype behind another comic book movie again, at least in my opinion. I think that they would have to drastically shake things up, and I just don't see that happening. Unfortunately, the higher ups at these companies have proven time and time again they don't understand what people want. I mean, look at James Gunn. He's rebooting DC again, and we're getting another Superman movie. I'm sorry, we had a fantastic Superman. I don't want another reboot, but instead, that's the decision that they're making. They need to go in the direction of a James Bond where they continue their storylines for years, have an actor do tons of movies, and then replace them. I have, this bad feeling that Amazon's going to do a big James Bond reboot, but that's beside the point. We need an actor to stay for a ton of years, do a ton of projects, and then you phase them out instead of having an actor do, 2 movies or 3 maximum, and then you're rebooting again. People are sick and tired of these things. And of course, another problem and another major issue is that they don't understand the audience who watches their content anymore. And by trying to shift their target audience for products, they're pushing people away, like the Marvels and the new movie Madam Web, okay? Clearly marketed towards females, and I'm a female and I've loved comic book movies in the past, but females had already watched MCU films. Females had already watched the Spider-Mans and the Venoms, okay, read the comics, and by changing characters or highlighting certain characters just because of their gender isn't going to make females more interested. Again, the females who watched already watched. They are already part of your target audience, and these companies don't understand, or maybe they do understand and they're just trying to ignore the facts that yes, comic book movies have been predominantly watched by men, and that is perfectly fine, but you also need to be creating content for those men or you're going to lose them. I mean, they should understand at this point. Brie Larson's The Marvels bombed at the box office with the worst opening weekend in MCU history. It also had the worst Monday, and it also had the worst second week drop, and it ended its theatrical run short as the lowest performing entry in the entire MCU, and then Disney decided to stop reporting weekend grosses because it was doing so bad. And if we go into the DCEU, the recent movies that they've put out have been terrible. Shazam! Fury of the Gods is the worst. That, of course, only recently came out. Wonder Woman 1984. Number 11, number 10, The Suicide Squad, 9, Birds of Prey. Like, these are movies that have only in the past, 2 years come out, and they're getting absolutely destroyed at the box office. Do I think that the, superhero genre can magically be saved? I think that they could make a lot of changes and bring a lot of people back. I know I am constantly consuming this content because I'm a content creator, and if they were getting better, I would be sitting here talking about how amazing they're doing and how they're making all these changes and actually trying to do something good for their audience. But that's not what they're doing, and I'm sure a lot of you want them to do better, want them to be better and give us better content, but I just don't see that happening anytime soon with the direction that they're heading in, with the changes that they've made over the past few years, the DEI messaging, the narratives that they have committed to shoving into their products. It's just not gonna change anytime soon, and it's sad to see. Maybe 2024 will be a different year. Maybe, yes, in fact, Marvel will actually focus on quality over quantity, like Bob Iger has promised time and time again, but only time will tell. But that's all that I really had to discuss in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed this, make sure to give it a like, share it, and subscribe to the channel. And of course, if you didn't, make sure to give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I will talk to you all again in the next video really soon.